Their name means people of the forest. Orangutans can only be found in the wild in Sumatra and here in Borneo, but now they face extinction. Their natural habitat is slowly being destroyed through illegal logging and palm oil plantations. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. On this edition of 101 East, we ask, will mankind's closest relatives be sacrificed for economic progress? Many of the orangutans at this sanctuary are either sick, injured or orphaned. But they're lucky. They're being rehabilitated to be returned back into the wild. But as Howell Davis reports, soon there may not be any forests to go back to.
It's dawn in the Indonesian section of the Borneo rainforest. A team of babysitters carries young orangutans out to their playground, a 62-hectare protected reserve. They'll spend the day learning the skills to enable them, one day, to survive in the wild.
If they come in at the age of about 1, it will take about 7 years.
Lona Dresden Nielsen is a former flight attendant from Denmark. She came here 13 years ago to see the jungle and fell in love with its animals. She now runs a rescue and rehabilitation centre for orangutans that have fallen victim to man's actions.
It's a totally different way of living than it would be if they were with the mothers. But we tried the best that we can to give them lots of love and attention.
All too often, they've survived ordeals no animal should have to endure.
This is Cassie. She had her hand cut off while they were killing her mother. They simply cut her mother to death with machetes. She's doing perfectly fine, actually. She's taken a little bit longer than some of the others to climb bigger trees, but she can even climb, not quite as big as this one, but she's starting to climb up trees because she just uses the stump to hold on. But because she's got 3 other limbs, obviously, it's a little bit easier than we would be a bit more handicapped.
Every day, the province of central Kalimantan echoes to the sound of jungle being bulldozed. The vast forests of Borneo are at the centre of a frenzied clearing program. The jungle is being replaced by palm trees. They're cheap to plant, quick to grow, and their red fruit yields what many tout as green renewable oil, useful for everything from cooking to truck fuel. Much of it ends up in supermarkets as a cheap food additive. Few outside Borneo realise just damage has been done to the wildlife. Singer Singham is a 73-year-old Dayak leader who grew up in the forests. He now fears the orangutans will disappear entirely.
In past times, there were many orangutans living freely in the wild. They built their nests in the tops of trees. Since the forest was cleared, they can't live anymore. Please don't plant new palm oil trees.
This week on 101 East, we come to you from the Borneo Rehabilitation Centre. It's a rather wet day today, but it is an appropriate backdrop to the issue that we're discussing today, which is the threats that are being faced by the orangutans here in Borneo. Joining me on the discussion panel, we have Dr. Tony Rahmat Suhartono, the Director for Biodiversity Conservation from the Forestry Ministry, Dr. Eric Mayard, Senior Ecologist from the Nature Conservancy, and Hardy Bakhtian Toro, President of the Center for Orangutan Protection. Thank you very much for joining us on this rather dreary day. Eric, why is it so important to save the orangutans of Borneo? What is their significance to these forests?
I can understand the question from a lot of people. I work with local communities here, and they quite often ask me, why is all this money coming in from overseas to help the orangutan, which means the man of the forest in Malay language. We are the forest people. We are the orangutan, the people that live here. Why don't we get that same kind of help? And it's a perfectly valid question, which makes it a little hard for me to just focus on orangutans. I mean, for me, orangutans are the symbol of, if we can keep orangutans alive, it means we manage the forest resources effectively. There's sustainable development possible, and that allows still the use and the maintenance of the services that these forests provide. And the orangutans are more a symbol for that. I think like Hardy, he would probably come from a different direction. It's much more an orangutan specific issue. So I think it varies, but I get confronted with that question a lot of, why do you care so much about the orangutan? Why do you care so much about the tiger?
They have the right to live. And they have ecological function, as Eric mentioned, so we have to maintain that. I share same concern with Pak Tony, that they have right to life. As we aware that orangutan is a sentient ape also, they can feel happy or sad or everything just like a human, because of they has a similar DNA with humans. It's like about 97%. We share same DNA with humans. So yeah, I believe that they are kind of human also, so they have right to life. So that's why we are in COP, and also our supporters are also angry. We are very angry if people torturing orangutan or kill them, just like kill human also.
Well, let's look at the worst case scenario. The numbers are starting to dwindle. If they do become extinct to a certain, at some point,
you
what
mean
happens
extinct
then?
in the wild or extinct
in the wild? Let's talk about extinct in the wild. I mean, we've got this sanctuary, we've got this rehabilitation center here, which is wonderful. But that means that they've become acclimatized to human touch. What happens if they are no longer in the wild? What does that mean for us?
Well, there's still hope if we still have some orangutan, even in the zoo or captivity.
Does that mean that perhaps that's the way we should start going? Perhaps we should capture all the orangutans in the wild, bring them into a sanctuary so that we can see them, observe them?
No, not at all. Because he mentioned orangutan has ecological function. They eat more than 500 seed, fruit, am I right? And then distribute the seed throughout the forest and planting the forest and maintain the forest. That's what he said earlier.
But I think the bigger picture is that if we do indeed lose all these orangutan populations, it basically means that all that habitat, all that forest is gone. That's not just a loss to orangutans, but it's a loss to much more. I mean, we're not just talking about orangutans as one of the many protected species in Indonesia. There's a huge range of biodiversity, species diversity out there that we haven't even started to touch, knowing fully what is actually there.
There are different ways to approach this particular problem. What is the Indonesian government doing?
The key thing for us is to find the balance between development and conservation for wildlife. My personal opinion is I wish I could protect the entire forest for the wildlife, but that's not irrational. I mean, it's completely irrational.
Hardy, is the Indonesian government doing as much as they can, given the constraints that they have to work within?
So in my opinion, so far government only, focus on the development economic. So there are many forests converted to the palm oil. So just to prove that the government not enough for orangutans, for orangutan life.
Eric, are you happy with the political will that's behind the government's efforts to save Borneo's orangutans?
I think we're making great progress in Indonesia. I mean, there's been a significant commitment. Last year there was a launch of the National Action Plan by the Indonesian President. It's been signed off as a ministerial decree by the Minister of Forestry. That's a solid, it's just a piece of paper. I mean, a piece of paper can go anywhere, but it is a solid political commitment to start this process. Now the next step is to start putting that process in place. And of course we've been waiting for this process to happen for a very long time. And as Hardy pointed out, there's a lot of competing interests. I mean, there's people that want to save orangutans, there's people that want to develop oil plantation, open coal mining areas. So there's a lot of difficulties that you don't solve by just putting out a piece of paper, but it's a start, and the commitment is there, and it's down to a lot of organizations, including governmental and non-governmental organizations, to translate it into real action.
And after the break, we will have more on the threats facing the orangutans here in Borneo.